Venezuela with Vista Mutual Insurance Services. Let's talk about how you can run an effective sales presentation as a Medicare insurance broker. There are a lot of things that go into running an effective sales presentation, and I think there's a reason why there's a lot of agents that don't do presentations. The number one reason is that most people are afraid of public speaking. So that's a huge factor. The greatest fears of people have, number one is dying, number two is public speaking. So think about that. People would rather die than speak publicly. So you have to get over that fear first of all. And the only way to get over that is to be prepared. So when we're training new agents how to do presentations, the biggest thing is for them to practice it over and over and over and over again. Make a lot of mistakes, present in front of a lot of different people, and get some feedback, and then know that you're prepared when you're about to go do a presentation. So one of the biggest things is preparation. You need to know the plans in and out. There should not be a question that you can't answer. Now, sometimes that'll come up, just a weird, random question that somebody has that is very hard to answer. We never want to assume on those types of questions, right? So we'll tell them we don't know and we'll get back to you. We'll find the answer. But there shouldn't be many of those that come up during a presentation that you don't know specifically. So read the materials, do the research, act like a client, go on their website, learn all of the ancillary vendors. So if someone has a question like, well, what's the mail order pharmacy? You'll know it right off the top of your head, which then makes sure that they know that you are the expert of the plan. Every time that we hesitate or say, well, I don't know, or these things can lead to mistrust from the client. So we want to be concise and we want to be accurate. So study, practice, practice, practice. Now, you also want to show up to your venue, the place that you're giving the presentation, about an hour early. Seniors like to get there early. So you're going to need some time to set up everything, put all your materials down. You know, if you have food that's going on or drinks, you want to make sure that that is all ready to go about a half an hour before people walk in, because they will start walking in about a half an hour before. Sometimes this is the only thing they're going to do that day. So they can be excited, and it also gives you time to sit with them and talk with them when they come into the meeting a little bit early, so you can build some rapport. Now, you want to have all your materials ready, right? Now, it's not a requirement that you give people plan materials, and we've tried it many different ways, withholding the plan materials until the actual presentation so that people don't, sift through it and try to find out the information beforehand, and just leave because they've already read it, or giving it to them and having them read it along with us. Using those different methods, I think that we found that having all the materials on the table for them is a better way to go about it. Now, some people will really read ahead, some people won't, but having it there for them so that they can follow along and mark off things and even write questions down as they go, we find really works well. So have all your materials, have your card, have your permission to contact form. That's the form that a client will fill out that gives you permission to contact them. Without that, you cannot contact them. And then also have a scope of appointment forms, because some people will want to set up appointments to further discuss their individual situation and not necessarily sign up directly at that meeting. So you want to have all that on the table, be there an hour early, and then you're going to want to ask people to hold questions until the end of the meeting. Now, it's important that you do this because we're going to give a full compliant presentation. We're going to go over all of the plan benefits and ancillary benefits that exist in the summary of benefits, right? So we want to make sure that they know that their question will most likely be answered during the presentation. And if not, we're going to have a question and answer period after. So as we're going through, write your question down. And if it gets answered, check it off. And if it doesn't, we'll get back to it at the end of the presentation. This will help your flow just go a little bit smoother throughout, so you're not constantly being interrupted. And we also want to make sure that they know that those questions should be for the good of the group. Sometimes there are very specific individualized questions like, is this doctor in this network? That is good for you, but it's not really good for the group. So you can set up an individual appointment for you to discuss those types of questions. Make sure your questions are for the good of the group. Now, you also have to understand all of the rules and regulations set out by CMS, right? So there are many of these, and this is not what this video is necessarily about, but you need to understand these. They're part of your training programs for most of the carriers and the AHIP training program that you do. It states a lot of different things that can and cannot be done at meetings. So make sure that you're very aware and of any new regulations that have come out. There will be more videos that we put out about these regulations, but you just need to know them before you step on and make a presentation. Now, you'll want to also explain to them that they are a protected class of citizen. You know, they have that permission to contact form right in front of them. They don't have to fill it out. It's completely optional. And if they don't, no one will be contacting them. It's important. Now, we know that this happens, but technically, we cannot contact a Medicare recipient unless they've given us express permission to do so. Now, that form gives us that permission. So during the opening parts of our presentation, we state this: you are a protected class of citizen. People should not be calling you without your express permission, and that's what that piece of paper gives me. So if you would like me to contact you after this meeting, please fill out that form. It's important to have that silence right there. That silence denotes that there's something that they need to do now. Without that silence, us just moving on, they wouldn't fill out that form. So make sure that you pause there, say nothing, and wait for pens to get in the hands to start filling stuff out. You're going to want to do this a couple times throughout the presentation. Usually when you make a good point or when you talk about how an insurance agent can help compare these things, you'll want to, again, point to that permission to contact form so that we can have a way to follow up with them afterwards. We also want to go, in the beginning of the meeting, we want to go over a brief understanding of original Medicare, kind of what Medicare Part A and Part B is, basics, not in depth, and also what a Medicare Advantage plan is compared to a Medicare Supplement plan. Now, usually these meetings are going to be for Medicare Advantage, so we want to separate them from Medicare Supplements by telling them the difference. And then we go into the full plan benefits. And when I say full, I mean full. There is not a benefit in that booklet that we're going to skip over. We're going to go from A to B, showing you everything that's involved and showing you the prescription drug program as well. We are going to have a story about each one of these benefits. Not to necessarily say that you have to say that story every single time, but when a benefit comes up that you really want to hit home, you want to use a story. And those stories, we want to put the client into them. So let's say we're talking about a hospital stay. And we say, there's two ways to say it, right? Well, a hospital stay is going to cost you $290 a day for days 1 through 4. And then you could just move on. Or you could tell a story about that benefit to help them better understand. So a hospital, when you stay the night in the hospital, so let's say you go into your doctor or you're just feeling really bad and you say, you know what, I have something going on, and you go into the emergency room. That's usually where you're going to go first. The emergency room says, you know what, you're a little bit too sick, you need to go to the hospital. Well, this plan is going to waive your emergency room fee, and then you're going to pay $290 per day per night that you're in the hospital. Now that $290 is going to cover everything that happens in the hospital while you're there. So if you spend another night, you'll spend another $290. But you'll only spend it until the 4th night, and after that, even if you're in for the rest of the year, you're not going to pay anything else out of your pocket for that hospital stay. So one way was telling, the other was explaining with a story. It's going to help them better digest it, understand it more, and then also they put themselves in the story, which means that they think that they have the plan already, and that helps with the closing process as well. Now, we want to go over the prescription drug information, but in a very generic way. Again, this is a point where we can tell them that you would like, if you'd like to, you can set up an appointment with me and I can go over all of your individual medications. But on a basic level, this is how the prescription drug plan works. It has a tiered system, whatever tiers it is, 1 through 5, 1 through 7. Tell them that, and then tell them the copayments for each tier. Then again, state, if you'd like to look up your individual medications, we can do that. We have the formularies. We can do that here today before you enroll, or you can set up an appointment and we can go over those as well. You want to do the same thing with their providers, because there will be questions like, is my doctor in this network? Now, if it's a general answer, like we know this plan has this network of doctors, we can say, yes, this plan has this network of doctors. And if your doctor is a part of that network, they have 100% of it, so you're usually good to go. We still want to verify that by looking it up for you, but you're probably okay. But if they have a listing of individualized doctors and they want to look up 10 to 15 doctors, again, that's not good for the group. We're just going to say, write all those down, and we can set up an appointment in order to go over those with you. We want to avoid using prohibited language. Now, CMS has a lot of different prohibited languages. Mainly is that we cannot steer people by using the words best or better, right? And that's not necessarily the case for everybody, and that's why they say that. The word best is a subjective opinion, and so we can't use it. So you can't say, this is the best plan that's offered in this area. You can use factual information to describe things. This plan has the lowest maximum out-of-pocket in the county. This plan has the lowest or highest over-the-counter benefit, all these types of things. But it has to be based on fact, and you have to be able to show and prove that fact, usually with a CMS-approved marketing document. This is another big thing. You can never use your own materials in order to present. You can never use a comparison grid that you made yourself to present two plans. It has to be plan-approved or CMS-approved materials. You could use some things from CMS.gov, though, if you wanted to, or Medicare.gov. It's important, too, that we provide precise and accurate information. This goes back to practicing and knowing your plan. So we really want you to know the plan. We want you to practice it a lot. And then once you have it all down, don't use complicated language in order to explain it. You know, most people read at a 3 to 5th grade level. So we want to allow them to digest the information without feeling overwhelmed. We don't want to use a lot of acronyms. If we ever use an acronym, we want to spell out what the acronym is before we use it. And then every time we use it, spell it out again. Because we often get in this area or space that we're insurance agents and we just know this stuff and it comes off of our tongue. And we speak with other insurance agents that also know the jargon and terminology, but we really have to dumb it down to the smallest levels for people. It makes no sense just to make yourself sound smarter, right? If you can say it in 3 words, what you can say in 10, say it in 3. And if you can use smaller words, use smaller words. If you can use an analogy that makes it easier or makes more sense for people, do that. So make sure that it's clear, concise, and simple. Now, we want to be aware of all CMS guidelines when giving a presentation, because there are certain things that we must go over, certain tenets that we have to hit. And there are these people called secret shoppers that work for Medicare and the carriers that will come out and they have a checklist and they'll check off all the things that you're supposed to hit. Now, there's some agents that'll grab that checklist and just hit those topics before they give their presentation. I think that this leads to a kind of disassembled and erratic presentation. So we like things to be precise and simple and easy and flow really well. So we hit all these points during our presentation. Some of these could be prior authorization or medication therapy management. These are things that we must go over in a presentation. And also networks and referrals and the requirement for that if it's an HMO. So you have to know those requirements and you have to hit them. This goes back to practice and practicing with someone that also knows what they're doing so that they can correct those minor things that you're doing. You also want to be personable, right? You can't just sit up there and present a very dry presentation. If you can add a joke or some levity in places where it's appropriate and get them on your side and having a conversation really rather than just sitting there listening to boring insurance stuff, it's going to be much better for you, which is again why we use stories to kind of liven things up and put them in the place of having the insurance already. Now, we want to make sure that we answer any questions from the attendees, right? So at the point that you're about to close down your presentation, you're wrapping up everything saying, okay, here's what we just talked about, giving a small overview. It has this, 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 and this. Now I'm going to open it up to questions. So if any of your questions weren't answered during the presentation, please ask them now. You'll want to let everybody ask as many questions as they want. Now, sometimes this isn't possible due to time constraints. So if that is something that happens, you'll want to say 2 questions before you're going to shut it down. These are the last 2 questions I'm going to take. just for time purposes, and then we can walk out and talk to them individually to answer their questions. Remind them again, the questions should be for the good of the group. If you get a question that is not, that's individual, point back to, I'll talk to you directly after, or we can set up an appointment to go over your individual needs. This will also help you close more sales. And we want to make sure that we provide next steps. Usually when we wrap up a presentation, at the end of the Q&A, we say, here is the application for this plan. Now this, of course, you have to be in an enrollment period between October 15th and December 7th, or if you're just doing this for people that are aging in, that could happen too. But we want to tell them, if you have any kind of small inkling that you're going to apply for this plan, I want to show you how to fill out this application. It has a lot of different things on it, but I can get you through it in about 5 minutes. And as a group, we go through the application. A couple things will happen when you do this. One, the people that are very interested in signing up will open up that application and start filling it out. The ones that aren't, or just came for the information, or maybe don't like you, will close that booklet, put their pen on top, and sit with their arms crossed. Or possibly even just leave, right? So you have two things there. One, you've identified people that are definitely interested. Two, you've identified people that are definitely not. And then you have the ones that'll kind of just sit there not knowing what to do. We want to just get through the first page of the app because we're identifying the people that really want to enroll. Then we tell them we're going to come around and check your work. As we come around and check their work, we're going to say, well, looks like you've done everything correctly. If you'd like to sign up for this plan, I just have to put a couple more things on this application. You can be done. This decision can be over. I'll take this with me and process it tonight for you. Or we have business reply envelopes. So I'll fill this application completely out for you. Make sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and then I'll give it to you. You can put it inside this business reply envelope, and when you're ready to enroll, you just put it in the mail and it'll come back to my office. Or I can give it to you, you can take it home, and then I can come over for an individual appointment and we can sure up any questions that you have, go over all your doctors and your medications, give you another full hour of my time, and at the end of it, you can just hand me that application. So we make things easy for them. The hardest part is sometimes the paperwork, so we don't want that to be an issue for them. Now, we do have ways to do this electronically, but it makes more sense in a group setting to have them go over it on a paper application because they can all do it at once. If I were to close that meeting and then want to sign up 5 to 7 people via my computer, each one of them is going to take about 10 to 15 minutes, and by the time I'm done with 2, the other ones are going to be gone, right? So we want to go over the application, have them fill it out on paper, and then submit it paper for presentations. Now, these are just a few tips and tricks that we use in order to have effective and efficient meetings. We're going to do more videos on this, and I'll expand more on each one of these topics because I think it's important for people to know, for the people that do these, because again, there's a very small percentage of us that do them. And I want every one of us out there that's doing these types of presentations, regardless of if you're with our agency or someone else, just to be the best they possibly can be, because this allows us to show CMS that we're doing the right thing as well. And so that not a bunch of new regulations don't have to come out for us doing the wrong thing. So I hope that you've gained some insight and maybe a way to do things that you didn't think of before, and some tips on how to make things more efficient at your Medicare meetings. So join us next time for more tips and tricks about how to become a better Medicare insurance broker.